If you could step outside your door 150 million years ago, you wouldn't recognize the earth beneath your feet. The ground, the air, the forests, even the sky. It all felt different. And right in the middle of it all, towering above you, were the giants. This was the age of the dinosaurs, and the world they ruled was nothing like the one you know today. Back then, Earth was locked inside what scientists call a greenhouse climate. There were no polar ice caps, not a trace. Instead, global temperatures ran far hotter than they do now. Imagine summers that never ended, humid air that clung to your skin, and tropical forests stretching across regions that are now frozen wastelands. Even Antarctica was blanketed in lush greenery. But it wasn't just heat. Rainfall patterns were wilder, with wet regions that never seemed to dry and dry interiors that baked into endless deserts. The planet's weather wasn't calm. It was powerful, shaping everything that tried to live here. And somehow dinosaurs didn't just survive in it, they thrived. Sauropods, the long-necked giants, stretched taller than buildings and weighed more than dozens of elephants. Predators like Allosaurus stalked them, sleek and fast, built for ambush in the dense forests. Crocodile-like reptiles prowled rivers, amphibians hid in swamps, and the very first mammals scurried in the shadows. It was a world of extremes, and life adapted to every corner of it. But there's something even more remarkable here. When you imagine dinosaurs walking this earth, you probably picture them on continents that look familiar. Africa, Asia, North America. But during much of their reign, the land beneath their feet wasn't anything like today. In fact, the dinosaurs' kingdom stretched across a single, colossal landmass. One supercontinent that changed everything about how these giants lived. And that's where the story turns next. When dinosaurs first appeared, Earth's continents weren't scattered across the globe the way they are now. Instead, nearly all the land was fused together into one colossal supercontinent called Pangaea. Picture it, a single landmass stretching from pole to pole, surrounded by one vast ocean. If you had set out to walk across it, you could have traveled thousands of miles without ever touching a shoreline. But living on Pangaea wasn't paradise. The sheer size of the continent created brutal extremes. In the interior, far from the moderating effect of the sea, temperatures soared during the day and plunged at night. Rain rarely reached this deep, leaving much of the land locked in endless desert. Plants and animals that survived here had to endure searing heat, dry winds, and almost no water. At the edges, though, it was a different story. Coastal regions fed by oceanic moisture grew forests where early dinosaurs thrived. These areas became hotbeds of evolution, giving rise to new species that took advantage of food and shelter unavailable in the vast arid heart of the continent. But Pangaea was never permanent. Beneath its surface, tectonic plates pushed and pulled, slowly tearing the land apart. Over tens of millions of years, Pangaea fractured into two massive continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. And as the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods unfolded, these pieces continued to drift toward the positions you'd recognize today. This breakup transformed life. When populations of dinosaurs were split apart by oceans and mountains, they evolved in isolation. South America gave rise to titanic sauropods like Argentinosaurus, while North America produced armored giants and horned dinosaurs. Isolation meant diversity, and diversity meant ecosystems more complex than ever before. It also reshaped the climate. More coastlines meant more rainfall, more fertile environments, and richer habitats. What began as a harsh, desert-dominated world gradually became a planet bursting with forests, swamps, and plains filled with life. But the land wasn't the only factor that shaped this world of giants. The real secret to their incredible success was in the very air they breathed. If you could take a breath during the age of the dinosaurs, the air would feel heavier, thicker, almost richer than what fills your lungs today. That's because Earth's atmosphere back then was dramatically different. Carbon dioxide levels were far higher, trapping heat and fueling the greenhouse climate. But at certain points in the Mesozoic, oxygen levels also spiked above what we have now. This combination changed everything. With more carbon dioxide, plants thrived, growing faster and spreading into every available space. Forests grew denser, Ferns and cycads carpeted the land, and conifers towered above them. Imagine a world where plant life seemed unstoppable, fed by an atmosphere almost designed for growth. And all that greenery meant one thing: endless food for herbivores. The massive sauropods could only exist in such an environment. They needed constant supplies of vegetation, and Earth delivered. And with such gigantic prey roaming the landscape, predators grew larger too, leading to an evolutionary arms race where size itself became a survival strategy. But dinosaurs weren't the only ones shaped by the air. Insects, too, reached astonishing proportions. Earlier in Earth's history, dragonflies grew wingspans over 2 feet wide, thanks to higher oxygen levels. By the time dinosaurs flourished, birds and other predators kept insect sizes in check. But the principle remained clear. A richer atmosphere made bigger life forms possible. And dinosaurs had another advantage. Their respiratory system was unlike that of mammals. Instead of simple lungs, they had air sacs, a system that allowed oxygen to flow continuously through their bodies, fueling their massive frames with incredible efficiency. It's the same system birds still use today, and it may explain how these giants could grow so large and remain so active. But the air was only part of the story. While land and sky were filled with giants, Earth's seas hid creatures every bit as extraordinary. Beasts that made the oceans just as dangerous as the continents above. While dinosaurs roamed the land, the oceans were ruled by creatures just as terrifying, though they weren't dinosaurs at all. Earth's seas during the Mesozoic teemed with giant reptiles, fish, and invertebrates that turned shallow coastlines into alien hunting grounds. Picture standing on what is now the middle of North America. During the late Cretaceous, you wouldn't see plains or mountains, you'd see waves. A massive body of water called the Western Interior Seaway stretched from the Arctic Ocean down to the Gulf of Mexico, splitting the continent in two. If you had tried to cross it, you would have sailed through waters filled with predators, unlike anything alive today. Among them were the mosasaurs, enormous marine reptiles that could grow over 50 feet long. With double-hinged jaws and teeth designed for gripping slippery prey, they were apex hunters of the seas, feeding on fish, ammonites, and even other marine reptiles. Sharing their waters were the plesiosaurs, with long necks and paddle-like flippers, and the dolphin-shaped ichthyosaurs, streamlined for high-speed chases. But it wasn't just reptiles. The oceans were crowded with ammonites, coiled shell mollusks related to modern squids. They thrived in numbers so vast that their fossils now mark entire layers of rock around the world. Imagine schools of shimmering fish, giant turtles, and armored creatures drifting below the waves, each adapted to survive in a constantly shifting marine world. Earth's seas weren't stable. Coastlines flooded and retreated as sea levels rose and fell, sometimes swallowing up entire regions and later leaving them dry. What might have been forest one era could become seafloor the next. These changes forced marine life to adapt quickly, or vanish, and the seas themselves were only part of Earth's restless energy. Volcanoes erupted, continents moved, and impacts from space scarred the planet. To live in the time of dinosaurs was not just to share the land with giants, but to survive on a world in constant motion, restless, raw, and unpredictable. But perhaps the most alien part of this Earth wasn't what lived on it. It was the sky itself and the forces that shaped the world from above. Look up at the sky during the age of dinosaurs, and you wouldn't see the same world you know now. Nights were darker, lit only by the stars, the moon, and the glow of volcanoes that erupted more frequently than today. Without cities and electricity, the world after sunset would have felt vast, mysterious, and even unsettling. The air itself carried reminders that Earth was alive and restless. Volcanoes poured ash into the atmosphere, changing climates for years at a time. These eruptions didn't just shape the land, they fueled cycles of destruction and renewal, wiping out species in one place while creating opportunities in another. And then there were the visitors from space. During the Mesozoic, Earth was no stranger to meteors and asteroids. Each impact scarred the planet, sometimes wiping out local ecosystems in an instant. Most were regional, but every strike reminded life how fragile it was. Of course, one colossal impact at the end of the Cretaceous would change everything. But even before then, the skies weren't safe. Storms also struck with a fury few humans could imagine. With higher global temperatures, hurricanes and thunderstorms likely raged with immense power. Lightning would have torn across the horizon more often, illuminating forests filled with giants. To live through a storm in the age of dinosaurs meant facing nature at its most raw and unrelenting. This was Earth during the time of the dinosaurs. Hotter, wetter, and wilder. A planet without ice caps, covered in forests, split by seas and shaken by volcanoes. It was our Earth, but alien, alive in ways that feel impossible today. And yet, without this world and without the rise and fall of its giants, our own story might never have begun. The age of dinosaurs wasn't just about the creatures themselves. It was about a planet constantly in motion, testing life at every turn. And in the end, that restless, dangerous Earth is what shaped the path that led to us.